Um, pranam to all of you. So this time we are very happy to inform that a number of registration goes beyond 6,000. So
Oh,
we pranam to all of you. We welcome to the IKS-TKDL workshop. This is the seventh time. So IKS-TKDL workshop on traditional knowledge, intellectual property, and people's rights. So today we'll have two sessions. First, our sir, Father Figure Murthy sir, will take the first session. We'll talk about the IKS, Indian Knowledge Systems. What is its vision, objectives, and which framework we are following. And sir will also focus on the IPR section related to IPR section. Then we'll go to the next session. Madam Dr. Satyagiri Madam, she will talk about the vast area of traditional knowledge, TKDL unit. And then Anil sir will talk about the core aspect of IP. Tomorrow, sir will talk about what are the different categories of intellectual property. So without delay, we'll go to our SAR session. Before that, we just wanted to inform some important information regarding our workshop. First, regarding assessment. So we'll have daily assessment, and the daily assessments and final assessment both are mandatory. So we request all of you, please pay attention and complete the assessment part after the session. And regarding certificate, there will be only assessment certificate, and we request to score minimum 75% to receive assessment certificate. And due to the limited WebEx capacity and huge amount of registration participation, only the first 1,000 participants can join via WebEx, and others who are requested to join through live YouTube live streaming session, and it's on our IKS_media_MOE. So all YouTube links are also uploaded in the Google Drive, and any updates, PPTs, recordings, everything will be available in the Google Drive folder which you have received. So with this, we request, sir, please start your session.
yeah. Thank you so much, Piyush. Namaste, everyone. I'll share my screen, and I hope it is visible to you all. It is visible to you all. Is that visible to you all?
Yes, yes,
Excellent. And then, can you see my screens move?
yes.
Okay, okay. Namaste, namaste everyone. Matrubhyo namah, pitrubhyo namah, gurubhyo namah, sabhaye namah, sabhapadibhyo namo namah. So today I will be talking about the Indian knowledge systems and then the relevance of Indian knowledge systems, or IKS as it is popularly known, uh, uh, and its importance in the changing world. And it's my pleasure to be conducting this thing in the first, basically, week, within the first week of our new year, Vishwava Susamvatsara, which, by the way, is the calendar that we follow is one of the very scientific ways in which we follow things. So, first of all, basically, New Year greetings to all of you, and then we'll go forward with this. So, what is this IKS? Typically, these are the questions that normally are raised by people. What is IKS? Why is it relevant today? How do we teach IKS? And then how will it help our students, our nation, and basically the world itself? So when we have that kind of a thing, the kind of approach that we want to have when we get into IKS from the IKS division perspective is essentially echoed by what Mahakavi Kalidasa says in his Madhukagnimitram. He says, Puranamityeva nasadu sarvam nachapi kavyam navamityavadhyam santah pariksham tyatarad bhajante mudah parapratyayane buddhi. What he's basically trying to say in this is, just because something is old, it does not become gold. Just because something is new, we should not discard it. We should basically evaluate things based on the merit of whether something is old or new. We should evaluate based on the merit, and after that, accept it. So he says that is the way of the wise people, Santah Parikshant Yatarat Bhajante. Whereas the fools, Modaha Parapratyayineye Buddhihi, will be dependent on the opinions of others. So essentially, it is with that kind of a Shraddha, but then at the same time, a very critical outlook that we will approach Indian knowledge systems. So, why is it relevant today? So, when you look at the world today, there are existential challenges that the world is facing. Uh, kind of thing we are talking about Vikasit Bharat by 2047. But then at the same time, by 2050, we will have, in another 25 years, we will have a world with 10 billion people. And the amount of resources that are available are already shrinking. So, how do we ensure that we are able to properly feed these people, provide water, sufficient water for their use, and then all the other resources for a comfortable living? I mean, it is really an existential crisis that we have right now. And then, we don't have inexhaustible resources. So there are limits to growth that can happen. And because of all of these things, it is really the questions that are being raised are really existential. But then, how are we trying to address these challenges? I mean, if you look at it from the Panchatantra's wisdom, it is essentially like the six blind men and elephant. Everybody is trying to figure out what the elephant is, and then they're just stuck in their narrow disciplinary silos. And then what that leads to is incomplete picture of the kind of the problem that we are facing. Because of that, the solutions often become problems themselves, creators of bigger problems. So therefore, one of the things that we should be thinking about is, of course, we need to take what we call as systems approaches. And hello, am I audible to everybody? I just
Yes,
want
sir.
to check.
Now
Absolutely.
you are audible.
Yes.
Okay. 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 Excellent. Thank you. Because there was a comment that said I'm not audible. Anyway, so although we want to take the systems and approach to solve these complex existential challenges, we also should be learning again from Panchatantra, the lion makers, that we should not create more problems because of that. So, how do we really try to do this? This is where the Bharatiya Jnana Parampara or the Indian knowledge systems comes into picture. So, what is this Indian knowledge system that we are talking about? Essentially, it is, if you see on your screen, there are three words. If you start from the bottom, it says Vijnana, that goes to Jnana, and then comes to Jivana Darshana. So, what is this Vijnana? Vijnana is nothing but the practical experiences that we have from living, and also the kind of things that we do in the world. Essentially, this is what is Vijnana, the practical experiences. And what those practical experiences have led to for our civilization is a refined mental model. We make the mental model of the world. This is essentially how the knowledge is created in the world. So we have these practical interactions. Based on that, we formulate the mental models, which are nothing but the jnana, the mental models. And from those mental models, we have the philosophical outlook, which is essentially nothing but Jivana Darshana. So if you see the Vijnana, based on the interactions with our environment and our society, lead to the Jnana, which is essentially the mental model of the world, and that leads to the philosophical outlook about the world. And this philosophical outlook in turn informs the mental models, which in turn come and are reflected in various practices that we have. So this thing that you see here is a two-way thing. And this, when a society builds over thousands of years, becomes a knowledge system. So what makes the knowledge system in India Indian is the unique Vijnana, Jnana, and the Jivana Darshana, the triad that we have, that percolates everything from our basic interactions with our environment, the mental models that we have, and the Jivana Darshana, the philosophical outlook. How does this come about? The Jivana Darshana comes about from deep experience, observation, experimentation, and rigorous analysis. And this Jnana is transmitted through textual, oral, and artistic traditions, and it is documented in all languages of Bharat. And practice in practice, it occurs in education, arts, administration, law, justice, music, healthcare, manufacturing, commerce, you name it. Basically, it is where it manifests itself. All of this triad actually forms the core of what we call as the Indian knowledge systems. When it is expressed in various disciplines, it becomes this kind of thing that you see on your right in the screen, the right side of your screen. You see the Jivana Darshana becomes the drishti. The core philosophical outlook becomes the perspective with which that discipline looks at the world. Then that the jnana is essentially transmitted through the parampara, that various traditional ways in which that knowledge is transmitted. And then finally, the Laukika Prayojana, which is essentially nothing but the practical utility of that knowledge to solve the current and emerging problems. So these are the three things that will be manifest in each discipline. So, for example, Ayurveda will have its own drishti, it will have its own parampara for knowledge transmission, and it will have a Laukika Prayojana. And similarly, the economics will have its own drishti, parampara, and then the Laukika Prayojana. Similarly, if you look at Rasayana Shastra, same thing. If you look at Vyakarana or the grammar, that is also the same thing. So every Shastra that you take, it will have its own Drishti, Parampara, and the Laukika Prayojana, which are connected to the Jivana Darshana, Jnana, and the Vijnana. These three things, Vijnana, Jnana, and Jivana Darshana, don't change. But these parts, the Drishti, Parampara, and Laukika Prayojana, keep changing depending on the discipline. So, this is essentially what we should be understanding. So, normal practice in Indian knowledge systems is we look at any discipline, look at the Laukika Prayojana, Parampara, and then Drushti, and achieve the pinnacle of excellence in that. And through these three things, we learn the Vijnana, Jnana, and Jivana Darshana. And therefore, we say that you can be anybody if you are achieving the pinnacle of excellence in your own field in India. We say that you will get moksha. So that is what is said about dancers. If you are able to dance in the best way possible, it will lead to the moksha. If you are able to sing in a way that enchants everybody and in the best way possible, then that also leads to it is called Nada Brahmopasana and leads to mukti. So that is essentially how we have connected every field to the Jivana Darshana and things. So essentially, this is a framework that encourages excellence in every field that we are trying to do. Now, when we talk about parampara, essentially it is something that has to be looked into, because there are three things when we talk about parampara. So, knowledge transmission, first of all, is first step is about preservation of the knowledge, which again, one thing is about preserving the documentation, manuscripts, all of these things. But then, more importantly, it is also about the preservation of the IKS drishti, that Jivana Darshana, that drishti is very important. Preserving that is what makes the knowledge system Indian. So it is very important to make sure that we preserve that drishti. Then that knowledge is transmitted through various ways. So that essentially methods, what those transmission methods are something that keeps evolving with times. And then from that, we also have to remember that whenever we talk about a parampara or the flow of knowledge, it is a flow of knowledge and not a stagnant pool of knowledge. So the body of knowledge is continuously updated, upgraded, new discoveries are added on, new knowledge is continuously created. So equally important to as the preservation and transmission is the creation part in the parampara. So in the Indian knowledge systems, it is not a static thing, it is something that is live with a lot of creativity, preservation, and transmission. All of these three things are a part of a cycle of knowledge transmission through the Jnana Parampara. Therefore, the knowledge creation is something that is continuous in IKS. Therefore, IKS cannot be classified as history studies. Neither is it limited to Vedas, Upanishads, and Puranas, Bhagavad Gita, or Hindu studies. There are so many things in the IKS that basically may not belong to any of these categories. So, therefore, we have to take that civilizational perspective when we talk about the Indian knowledge systems. Of course, all of these things, Vedas, Upanishads, Puranas, Bhagavad Gita, all of these are part of Indian knowledge systems, but that is not the complete set. There are other things beyond that also. And therefore, another thing about the Bharatiya Drishti is that what is this Drishti that makes it Bharatiya? Again, one thing is that we always look at basically reality at three levels: Adi Bhautika, Adi Daivika, and Adhyatmika. So, what is that? Adi Bhautika, Adi Daivika, Adhyatmika. That means at a physical plane, Adi Bhautika, Adi Daivika at a mental plane, and spiritual plane is the Adhyatmika. So, everything is related to these three levels. So, every situation analyzed and looked at these three levels. And there are four goals of life: Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. For what is really basically in this world is essentially apara dharma, artha and kama, and then para dharma for the spiritual nourishment is moksha. That is that fourth purushartha, and all of these things are bound by the dharma. So this is the four basically goals of the purushartha, and then there are also the four ashramas: brahmacharya, gruhastha, vanaprastha, sannyasa, depending on what stage of life we are in. Brahmacharya is a student life where we are trying to learn and acquire knowledge, discipline, all of those things. Grihastha is a life of basically householder who is raising a family, earning money, supporting all the other ashramas, and then pursuing the artha and kama part of this thing here. And then vanaprastha is the kind of the after all the responsibilities are over. Essentially, it is something that is like a retirement kind of a life, and sannyasa is the final ashrama where we talk about the moksha. So all of these three aspects are part of essentially the Bharatiya Drishti that we talk about. So it is important that we look at all of these three things whenever we talk about Bharatiya Drishti. So why do we need to invest in IKS? Because there is really a scarcity of genuine scholars in this area, which leads to propagation of myths and unscientific claims. So, for example, all these extreme claims will actually damage the genuine IKS traditions. And string theory, for example, is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavad Gita is a claim that is made, which is completely nonsense because what they are talking about is a shloka from seventh chapter, seventh shloka, in fact, and mattah parataram nasti kinchidasti dhananjaya mai sarvamidam protam sutre manigana iva. So what is the Sutra Maniganaiva? So just because the Sutra word Sutra is mentioned in the textbooks, we will say Indian science is a myth. Indian math was not rigorous. They did not have a concept of proof. Again, and we learnt everything from Greeks and the West. That is also completely not true. Truth lies somewhere in between. Therefore, there is a critical need for the HEIs to take leadership and understand and research the scientific and technological heritage of India. And then NEP places a great emphasis on this one. So it is something, and in all the Bharatiya Bhashas, in multiple languages, in all, even for the not just the literature subject, but also for the technical subjects. So it says this in multiple ways. I'm just going to skip this because of the time, but essentially, I will make one claim here. So I would like to uh, make one thing that says that IKS provides a unique perspective that is holistic, rigorous, and innovative in its approach. So, what is this uniqueness of Bharati Drishti? I want to showcase that a little bit. So, for example, take the case of economics. So, if you take a case of economics, capitalism basically talks about what we talk about as Shuddha Labha because it talks about maximizing the profit. Labha is the profit. Shuddha Labha is pure profit. Because if you look at any capitalism theory, that says maximization of profit is the basically the only goal there. And unbridled capitalism will lead to only profit maximization because it does not care about other aspects. It will lead to exploitation of humans and nature. And it will also lead to pseudo democracies. We are seeing that in the West today. What was the society's basically reaction to this? It basically, if you look at when Karl Marx and all of those people wrote their Das Kapital and all that, it was in the 17th and 18th centuries in England, in London, which was the basically the capital of the capitalism of the world at that time. And they saw all the problems with the capitalism, and then they propounded another theory that said Shuddha Labha, pure profit is not right. Therefore, we need to have Shunya Labha. That is zero profit. Let us not talk about profit at all. Let us talk about communalizing everything. Everybody is equal. Everybody basically is something, regardless of the effort and all, we'll give everybody the same outputs. Then what that leads to is stifling of innovation and entrepreneurship because there is no basically need for anybody to innovate because everybody is going to get the same benefits and entrepreneurship will go down. This will also lead to exploitation of humans and nature and dictatorships. And we, in fact, have to we have seen these things. Whether you talk about former USSR, Canada, Venezuela experimented with it, and many failed states, North Korea, all of these places, right? So, what was the Bharatiya model of this? What was the Indian model? whether we talk, I mean, so capitalism had the Shuddha Labh as the main motive, communism had the Shunya Labha or zero profit, and equalizing profit to everybody as the negating the profit motive as the primary driving force. What was the Bharatiya model? You'll see this written on the doors even today. We say Shubha Labha. That means, of course, we want profit, but not at the cost of the Shubha. That is welfare. We want welfare for everybody. Everybody should be happy, Shubha, but along with that, I need Labha. So when you have that kind of a framework, no exploitation is really possible because the dharma, which is missing when you talk about capitalism, communism, acts as a check on the unbridled profit motive, but it also acts as a check on the negation of the wealth creation. So dharma does not allow us to exploit others. At the same time, it does not allow us to stay lazy and then basically steal from others, like in what they do in communism. So these two things acted as a check, and that's what really taken it forward. And then, if we talk about Bharatiya frameworks on the individual economics, if you look at it, most of the modern economics, if you look at the theory there, is all based on the consumption and pursuit of consumption. And then, but then, what is Bharatiya model made on? Based on, it's based on the pursuit of happiness or ananda at the nature. What this leads to is the differences in basically the way it manifests. Consumption based economies will talk about exploitation of nature, unlimited growth, and societal discord are basically the results of this. Whereas when we talk about Ananda, thriving with nature, growth that meets the needs of all, and the societal harmony are the basics of pursuit of happiness, which essentially is the Bharatiya framework that we talk about. And then, if you look at even the health aspects, allopathy talks is a disease-centric healthcare system which talks about treatment of disease, whereas Ayurveda, one of the first principles that says is swasthasya swasthya rakshanam. Aturasya roga shamanam. Basically, to protect the health of the healthy first, then basically treatment of the symptoms of the people who are deceased is essentially the principle of Ayurveda. So protection of the swasthya and pursuit of swasthya is really the focus of Ayurveda. So therefore, it becomes something you will see the manifestations of this in very very different way in terms of affordable personalized medicine rather than expensive healthcare, so on and so forth. This is exhibited even in the systemic approaches of Ayurveda, even in the methodological things it is reflected. Allopathy is more of a reductionist approach. Remember, when I'm making these comparisons, I'm not saying Ayurveda is better than allopathy or allopathy is better than Ayurveda. All I'm trying to tell you is that Ayurveda has a systemic approach, allopathy has a reductionist approach. Both of these are important, both of these are useful, both of them are necessary for human progress. We cannot, it is like saying which wheel of a bicycle is important. We need both. So this is something like that we need to be thinking about. Okay, so I hope that this basically conveyed to you the uniqueness of Bharatiya Drishti. And then let's talk a little bit about the multidisciplinary and holistic approaches grounded in reality. So if you look at, so I will take a very different example of agriculture and trade. If you look at the map of the world that I show here, you see these are all the areas, even in open oceans in the Indian Ocean and Bay of Bengal, all of those places, we used to have ships that used to ply. They used to go all the way up to Zanzibar and Mozambique and Zanzibar and Kenya. And basically, all of these things are essentially something that we used to trade. So, for that, advanced mathematics, advanced knowledge of astronomy, so that you can find the direction in the open seas is needed. You also need advanced knowledge of weather, wind patterns, and so on and so forth. So, if you look into simply the agriculture, there also again it is dependent on the weather patterns and things like that. So confirmed evidence for agriculture in India, if you look at it, it will go to at least 10,000 years before present. There is archaeological evidence, and then these two pictures that you see are from Bhimbetka, which is very close by to our place here in Indore. It's near Bhopal, and it is one of the three sites in the world, and only site in the world that you can go and access this and then see with your own eyes. Here, some of these rock paintings go all the way from 35,000 years to 500 years ago. So that is the continuity of civilization that we are talking about. There you can see, for example, in the first picture here, you can see a small hen. You can see, of course, horses, and then you can see people with some kind of a thresher, bows and arrows. There are many chickens here. So these are all showing, indicating settled domestication of animals, settled settlements, and all of these things, which are basically indicative of agriculture. So, what were the first crops that we domesticated in our Indian subcontinent? The very first one was barley, and close to that was wheat. And then comes in the second end of domestication, ragi, tuar, chana, linseed, basically, and then cotton. These are all the crops that we domesticated. Finally, about 4,000 years ago, basically rice was essentially domesticated. We say that, I mean, there is some evidence that says that it was almost simultaneously domesticated both in China and in India at the same time. So again, with more evidence, the picture will be clear. But essentially, this is how things are. I mean, found in archaeological evidence. So in caves and all the burial sites and all of those places. So when you talk about agriculture, the confirmed evidence, as I said, goes back to 10,000 BP. And even in Shatapada Brahmana, importance of water was realized. So Agnirve Dhumo Jayade, Dhuma Brahma, Abhrat Vrishti. Basically, that heat or the fire creates vapors, vapor creates clouds, clouds give rain. It was there. Basically, rudimentary hydrologic cycle was understood even then. Why this becomes important is this knowledge was not known in the West until few hundred years ago. And rainfall was considered something as purvachitti or prior wisdom that you could predict, something that is predictable in Vedas. And then rishis like Kashyapa, Parashara, Gautama, Vatsa, they all came up with various rainfall prediction methods. And Krishi Parashara is one of the earliest agricultural texts that at least goes to 2400 years ago, and that talks about 6 to 7 months in advance and short term predictions also. And he talks about it in various ways: four types of clouds, seven types of basically 7 year cycles, 4 year cycles. Chanakya's Arthashastra talks about a 3 year Venus cycle. All of these things are actually related to the monsoon cycles that are present in Indian subcontinent. There was a spectral analysis of 60-year monsoons based on the data from 1960 in 1950s to 1994, and then based on that data, when they analyzed it basically on the spectral analysis, they found that it has peaks at 3 years, 7 years, 12 years, 18 and a half years, 60 years, and even 5 years or something like that. So all of these things actually correspond to the way that these people were predicting it. So I'm not going into the details of these methods, but it is very easily accessible. And if you look into Krishi Parashara, it's basically a 7 modulo operation or a 4 modulo operation in maths based on the Shaka Samvat. And modern, it very closely corresponds to what we do in the modern weather forecasting methods. Varahmira, for example, talks about Garbhottamam. It is something that is very common even in Tamil Nadu. They call it as Garbhottam. Basically, what they do is they look at the sky conditions in Kartika Masa in November, and then using that predict what the rains or the monsoons will be in July, next July. So what this basically helps you, what it is based on is the strength of the jet streams that comes down in the Indian subcontinent at that time. So Krishi Parashara method, this is the method that is there. Basically, it is take the Shaka year, multiply it by 3, add 2, divide it by 7, find the remainder, and based on that, you can figure out whether you have heavy rainfall, average rainfall, scanty rains, good rains. It will be dry, dusty, all of these things. Even the amount of rainfall is given. So these are all things that basically something that are described in the Krishi Parashara method. So similarly, you'll see. And then also you'll see that these texts, this is a Brahat Samhita method, which is basically based on the 27 nakshatras. There is a method that is used in Tamil Nadu today, which is based on the 60-year cycle. These are all methods that are pan-Indian. There are many methods with various regional variations and then tuned to various regional conditions, because weather, as you know, is dependent on the location. So what it is in Saurashtra will be different in Bengal, and it will be different in the Tamil Nadu or in Kashmir. So or in the Northeast. So things are all very different there. And so these methods have been tweaked for the regional this thing conditions. Also, It also not just talks about the weather. In fact, if you look into some of the Krishi Parashara, which is an agricultural text, it talks about ethical treatment of animals. And that famous this thing, right? Quotation, Ahimsa Paramo Dharma, that actually occurs in the context of animal treating animals ethically without harming them in Anushasana Parava of Mahabharata. It says Ahimsa Paramo Dharma, Tatha Himso Parodama, Ahimsa Paramam Danam, Ahimsa Paramam Tapah. And Krishi Parashara says if you mistreat the animals and even if you get a lot of yield, then you are going to lose all of it because of the curses that the animals will give you. And that is the way that they really try to show, make sure that we treat the animals ethically in agriculture also. Kautilya in Arthashastra uh, basically forbade killing wild animals for the sake of entertainment. Killing of wild animals should not be hunted for entertainment was a strict rule at that time, and strict punishments were given to people who cause intentional harm to animals, and there were measures to protect both the wild and domesticated animals. In fact, even today you see this in practice. In fact, in Bengal there is a particular time of the year when in Bengal they don't eat fish. I mean, that's something like saying a lot. And why? Because that is actually the spawning season of the fish, and so they don't eat. So that the cycles are maintained. This is the way that we were ecologically conscious through our cultural practices. These are all the things that are integrated into our practices. This is the essentially you saw when we were talking about agriculture, we had ethical treatment of animals, we had about seed protection, plant protection, we had about weather predictions. All of these things were grounded, I mean, made together, brought together. So this is basically the kind of a thing that we talk about. And then what are the sources of knowledge? I'm not going to go into too much of all of these things. Basically, I'll just say that we have various primary sources, which are the original text, the translated primary sources, and then the secondary sources, which are based on that, and various types of resources, whether it is manuscripts, books, research papers, monographs, and then there can be many types located in various ways. But what I would like you to pay particular attention to is the primary sources can be in sutra form, bhashya form, vartika, karika, and vyakhya. So, Sutra is an aphoristic treatise. Basically, it is essentially something that is written for the experts by the experts. That is not an introductory text. So, we should never go to a Sutra text and then say, where is the proof? Where is the explanation? Because it is not for that. So, it is will be given in a very cryptic, small format. So, in fact, entire Aryabhatiya, imagine Aryabhata's work, was in 108 verses in which he described the entire theory of Siddhanta of astronomy. Bhashya, on the other hand, is a commentary on that sutra, so it will explain. You'll see the explanations there. And Vartika is like the second edition or the revision of the sutra bhashyas. Karika is like your numerical examples, worked out numerical examples that we use. So it is like a versified technical treatise with how to calculate and all of these things. Vyakhya is like a glossary, is a gloss. So we should go to a particular text, understand what is the nature of the text, and then only comment on whether there is a proof in that or not. For example, you will not find proofs in Sutra. You will not find how to use the method in a Sutra text. You'll find that in Karika. You'll find an explanation of that Sutra in Bhashya. You'll find how people have revised it and then edited it and then added more knowledge in the Vartika. And Vyakhya is like basically a gloss. So these are the things that we should remember, because a lot of the criticism comes from uninformed people who will go into Sutra text and then say, where is this? How is this? There is no explanation at all. This is very cryptic. How will a normal student understand? This is not written for a normal student. We should understand the purpose of the text. So these are some things that I want you to please pay a little bit of attention here. And then how do you find an authentic source? Find the primary source first. Consult an expert, then identify multiple secondary sources, which are peer-reviewed literature, bhashyas, vartikas, karikas, tika, commentaries, translation. All of these things are there in the traditions, not just in English in the last 200 years or so. Not just in Bharati Bhasha, it's there in all languages in India. You'll find millions and millions of manuscripts in this and evidence from multiple independent sources. So this is just to show you one example, because if I show you Ayurveda, you will all know. There is so much of that information about that, whether we talk about Vyakaran and all that. I just wanted to show you agriculture as a knowledge system. See, Krishi Parashara was at least written 400 BCE. That is a best guess. It would be definitely be older than that. It cannot be beyond younger than that. That's basically what it is. Kashyapi Krishi Sukti was written in 800 CE. Surapala's Vriksha Ayurveda was written in around 10th century ADE, CE. And then Manasollasa was written in 12th century CE. Vishwavallabha was written in 16th century. Nuskahadar Fanni Falahat was a Farsi text written in 17th century. There is another one called Krishi Gita written in Malayalam in 18th century. So there are texts, all of these things that you'll see. And then this is only one fraction of the information that is present in the overall thing. There are so much information in various Bharatiya bhashas as what we call as small couplets and things like that that people can just remember. And all of these are technical texts. There is nothing, these don't talk about moksha. They actually talk about agricultural operations, plowing, furrowing, seeding, cultivation. These are all technical texts. Therefore, such texts need to be looked at by the technical experts. Similar are the texts in chemistry, mathematics, metallurgy, whether you talk about Rasayana Shastra, whether you talk about Shilpa Shastra, they're all technical texts. So it is very important for us to understand that in India, amount of spiritual texts, whether we talk about Upanishads, Vedas, and Puranas and Itihasas, they consist only 5% of the total literature. 95% is about all of these other Laukika Prayojana. And then, so these are all the various texts there. And I just want to finish up with next 5 minutes talking about the Indian Knowledge Systems Division of the Ministry of Education, which I'm very fortunate to basically represent here today. And again, we focus on all of these three triads, and our vision is to rejuvenate and mainstream Indian knowledge systems for the contemporary world. So for us, the objective is to decolonize Indian mind by generating interest and healthy critical reverence for the unbroken knowledge traditions of Bharata for the welfare of the world. This is essentially what we work for. And then we intervene at various levels at school, higher education, research, and research levels, institutional level, societal level, all of these things. And now we have many more of these things, but these is essentially as of January of this year. We have, as you can see, there are activities spread all across the country, all kinds of things, research projects, internship for students, centers, FDPs for faculty, courses, scholarly publications. All of these things are basically available to you. And then how can you engage with the IKS division? There is a lot of resources that we have made it available. In fact, there is more than a month worth of courses, lecture recordings, lecture notes, and reference materials freely available on the IKS division website, which are all authentic resource materials we stand behind. So, if, regardless of whether you are a chemist, mathematician, you can go there and then find at least 2 days worth of recordings only on your topic. And then please do basically get engaged with our email list, because there are many events that happen across the country. We keep sending emails and things like that. And so, and then there are online talks and by experts that we engage in, and then there are training and networking, especially faculty development programs in collaboration with the UGC that we do. And we are trying to expand our network of genuine scholars based on serious scholarly study, dedication to these things. And our mission is to empower teachers to become acharyas, shikshaka to become acharyas. And what are the four takeaways? Understand, study, and add to the traditional wisdom, please. IKS is not history studies or limited to religious studies. What makes IKS unique is the Bharatiya Drishti, which basically takes that systemic, holistic, multidisciplinary approach. And you can see how we have taken that kind of a Bharatiya Drishti, and then it manifests in various forms, whether it is in the oldest operating dam in the Kaveri Delta by Chola's Grand Anicut, Karikala Chola's built one, or whether you talk about Rani Ki Vav in Gujarat, or you talk about Sabo agriculture in Nagaland, or the Uttarakhand's very famous methods of irrigation in the hills there. So all of these things are just a manifestation of that Bharatiya Drishti, which, while taking care of the nature, also talks about the welfare of all, that Shubhalava concept. With that, I would like to thank you all for listening to this presentation. And then what we really strive for is to do the swadharma with nishkama karma for the loka sangraha, or something that basically is for the welfare of all, will lead to the moksha. And as Ramakrishna Paramahamsa's Ramakrishna Mission's Dheya Vakya says, Atmano Mokshardham Jagat Hitaya Cha. With that, namaste everyone. Thank you so much. And I will probably take a few questions if
Yes, sure, sir.
uh,
So we can
Piyush
take
allows.
2, 3
Yeah,
questions.
so you tell me and then we'll be there. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, sir. So let me check. Karishma ji, could you please ask your question? Then,
I don't think they can ask them to type the question.
okay. So
I
we
see.
request,
Can
please
you?
ask your,
There is one
please type your
question
question so we can,
by
we
Sri.
can.
Yeah, there is one question by Sri Prakash Jhaji. He says, "How can you differentiate between old IKS and new IKS?" There is no differentiation. It is a continuous stream of knowledge. There is no old and new, because how do you say a river is flowing? That's basically what the IKS knowledge Jnana Parampara is. It's a flowing river. In fact, I'm reminded of a this thing example that Nilakantha Somayaji gives in a 14th century text describing about astronomy. He says, we always have to update our knowledge based on new observations. He says it is like a basically a traveler traveling with a lamp in his hand in the night. So only some portion before him and behind him is illuminated. So basically, our models are built based on the observations that we have done a priori in the past, and we predict only something into the future. But we are continuously making new observations, and that has to lead to correction of our models. So this is what he says: don't consider the models to be something that is perfect. Keep observing and improve both of them together. This is something that he talks about. So there is no old and new IKS. It's all IKS. There is a civilizational continuity that we should be proud about. That's what it is about. So Dr. Maulik Rathod, from where we get literature to implement IKS in commerce and management studies, you'll be very happy to know, Dr. Rathod, that we just announced a program. One of our textbooks that we are going to create in next 8 months to 1 year is focused specifically on the accounting and financing thing, aspects of IKS based on the Bahi Khata system and all the accounting systems that we had in India. And also, that actually is fascinating. You may say, okay, what is a previous 400-500 year ago accounting system going to help us today? It actually involves some of the advanced concepts of finance, which are today called as relational finances, which are actually reflecting the risk. You see, you cannot do that in a simple Excel sheets. This is something that we are going to come out with. And then there are many projects that we have funded, and all those works, basically, you can find it on our website. So that is one thing. And there are tremendous amount of work going on in management studies in IIT Bombay by Ashish Pandeyji's group, and then Professor B. Mahadevanji's group in IIM Bangalore. He's a retired professor retired from there now. But these are all the things that you can look into. And and as I said, any recommendations for authentic sources to find research? So you see, that is the kind of thing that I talked about. Look at primary resources, look for their translations, look for independent confirmations. These are all the ways that you can really look into those things. And oh, okay, does AI affect the IKS? Dr. Sagar Gawandeji. What? And then there is another question by uh, Dr. Hrishikesh Vattamwar, basically saying IKS Parampara is preservation, transmission, creation. What is your take on creation in today's world of AI? Yes, I mean, see, the thing is, AI, this is where again I want to make one very important thing. what you see as Chat GPT, all of these things, they are basically a class of AI models called as LLMs, right? Large language models. There is also some things called medium language models and small language models for specific domains that people are building. But all of these, what is it at the core? If you look into LLM, what it is basically doing is it is predicting the probability of the next word based on a sequence that it has previously seen. And when you train it on basically a large corpus, then you can basically predict what is the next word probability, and that is basically the fundamental thing there, nothing else. I mean, this may sound very stupid to you. What is that got to do with the entire conversations that has, but ultimately at the fundamental level it is all about predicting the next word probability. Now imagine this. See, if you actually take English, there the word order is very, very important. But if you take a language like Sanskritam, the word order does not matter. So first premise of your LLM is gone when you talk about IKS. Because if you are talking about any Sanskrit text. Second thing, because this does this, the drishti part does not come into this. Because the word order does not matter. So then you actually have to think about the models that are there. The jnana aspect has to be there. Right now, it is only limited to the vijnana part. It is just doing it very fast. So we think that it is something that is very creative. But it is nothing like that. In fact, you cannot use Chat GPT, for example, to ask it to basically say you cannot twist it and then ask a question. In fact, we tried this one. We were trying to make a chatbot for Ramayana. So it would answer, who is Rama's father? But if I ask Lava and Kusha's grandfather's father, it would be stumped because it just doesn't know how to make these relationships. And whereas, so that drishti, I mean, even there it has problems. And then forget about that. I mean, when you go to fundamental philosophical concepts and then the drishti part, it is nowhere that it can really come as a competition. Yes, it is useful to some extent for our translating the text. I mean, and doing that kind of a minimal things. But this is where the knowledge component of the Indian knowledge systems is going to be very useful, because AI right now, although looks very brilliant and all, cannot basically, you cannot have an LLM in Sanskrit. That's basically what I'm trying to say.
Yes, sir. So we can conclude with one question
Yeah.
from Sapna Rajji. How to incorporate IKS in STEM education? STEM.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. In STEM education, basically, we have a lot of resources that we have created. In fact, you'll be very happy to know that on the IKS division website, there are actually more than 40 courses that have been taught in various premier institutions in the country. Their syllabus is already given. The name of the PI is already given there. You can download the syllabus along with the reference text, what is the course modules that are going to be, and things like that. So you can actually go there, download it, and then contact the PIs and develop your own courses. That is number one. Number two, on the Swayam platform, we are going to launch at least 12 IKS minors in various sub-disciplines. All of those courses will be available to anybody across the country to take, and then you should be able to learn more. These are the ways that you can integrate IKS into your STEM disciplines. So all of these things are discipline-specific electives and discipline-specific courses. So you can find what is appropriate for your university, for your discipline, particular discipline. Thank you. Namaste.
Madam, so I request you, please take over the next session. It's 4:25. Okay,
Yeah,
please.
thank you so much, Professor Murthy. As usual, it was really very informative and very motivational talk
Thank
by
you so
you.
much.
And very, I mean, truly informative. I think you've added some more content since our last workshop. Thanks so much for us. Also, it's a great learning. Thank you. So I will also move on to share my slides. Just let me know, Piyush, once.
Yes,
Okay.
perfect.
All right. Okay,
Could you
so
please make it
here,
full slide? It's perfect. Okay.
okay, all right. So again, I'll continue with what Professor Murthy had just talked about. I think he has given you a great response and the value that the Indian knowledge systems hold. I'll continue with the same thing. The reason why the traditional knowledge digital library unit of the CSIR and the IKS division have come together for arranging this workshop is because of the similarity in our objectives. Here at the CSIR TKDL unit, we are focused on preserving and protecting Indian traditional knowledge, especially from in the context of misappropriation. You'll get to know more about it in the days to come. Whereas when you look at the IKS division, as Professor Murthy just mentioned, it is all about ensuring that we preserve and disseminate Indian knowledge systems for further research and as well as societal applications. So with these common objectives between the two organizations, we have been doing this workshop since June 2023, and today we are in the first day of the 7th workshop focused on this topic, that is traditional knowledge, intellectual property and people's rights. So it's going to be a 5-day workshop. I'll give you the details of what we do and how we go about it. So on the first day, it's more of, a warm-up exercise to talk about, the expanse and the value that the knowledge systems hold. So at the end of the session, you will be given an assessment and it's going to be for 30 minutes. Then it can be followed with a question and answer session. The slides, the presentations of the speakers would be provided to you on your Google Drive. So please make sure that you access the Google Drive to download the slides, the presentations. On day 2, we will be talking about the fundamentals of the intellectual property rights. So this is more into general IPR frameworks that is available for everybody. It's not just limited to traditional knowledge. Again, the same thing. We have a presentation and followed by an assessment, followed by the question answer session. On the 3rd day, we are going to talk about protection of traditional knowledge. So we'll be introducing new terminologies, that is defensive and positive protection of traditional knowledge. We'll talk about the TKDL, that the work that we do at the Traditional Knowledge Digital Library unit of the CSIR, again, followed by assessment and question answer session. On the 4th day, you'll be hearing to know something related to ethics, because when we talk of ethics, it's I'm sure all of you at different college levels, you have a credit course focused mandatory course that is talking about ethics, but largely it is limited to checking for plagiarism and data fabrication and things like that. But in the context of traditional knowledge, it assumes a greater significance, because what we are talking about here is people's rights, and that is what you would get to know on day 4, followed by assessment and the interactive session. On day 5, we'll just touch upon the TK inspired innovations, what is the potential from across international experiences, followed by a detailed assessment. Okay, so this is the structure of the workshop. So today, again, continuing with what Professor Murthy just talked about, I will also touch upon the expanse and significance of the Indian knowledge systems. And here I would like to draw to the attention of everybody that when we talk of the traditional knowledge of India, of course, we do have it in a codified form, because, we have the manuscripts in maybe palm leaves, cloth, metal sheets, even inscribed on rocks and even on the temple walls and so on and so forth. Later, we had those in the form of books, that is text, and across various diverse subject domains, be it the Sahitya, the Vedas, the Upanishads, or even medicine or agriculture that Professor Murthy talked about, the food that we eat. Across all these diverse subject domains, you do have, texts that cover, and across, and also it is important to note that it is not only typically in Sanskrit, but it is across all our regional languages as well. For example, when you talk of Ayurveda, it is available in Sanskrit, it is available in Marathi, it is available in Malayalam, in Tamil, and so on and so forth. Similarly, when you talk of Unani, which is again a different stream of medicine, Indian system of medicine, you will find it in Urdu, Arabic, and Persian. When you talk of Siddha, it is in Tamil and Malayalam, and so on and so forth. So the texts that you have are available across diverse Indian languages as well. In addition to the codified knowledge, considering that our knowledge has been transmitted largely by word of mouth, you would also still continue to see much of our traditional knowledge still being transmitted by the word of mouth. This is called the oral traditional knowledge, or it is also called the local practices. In the context of medicine, it is called the local health traditions, and so on and so forth. In addition to this, two major categories of traditional knowledge, that is the codified traditional knowledge and the oral traditional knowledge. The manuscripts have a very important role here. While we say that the manuscripts is form of a codified traditional knowledge, here we need to understand that much of these languages, including the scripts that we see, might have been lost. We have very few people who are still aware of those scripts and as well as the languages. So the manuscripts, though codified, is still forms a very special aspect of traditional knowledge, and we will also touch upon it in the days to come as to how we need to handle manuscript information also. Largely in the context of manuscripts, under the Ministry of Culture, you have the Indira Gandhi National Center for Arts, and they have a program called the National Mission for Manuscripts that is looking at documenting and digitizing manuscripts. In all of this, as Professor Murthy also mentioned, our education or even the knowledge systems that have transmitted from one generation to the other over thousands of years is largely based on the observational skills. And perhaps, in today's context, we can say rudimentary science and technology. But if you actually go back and look at the text, look at the Nyaya Shastra or the Pramana Shastra, it talks about the science of correct knowledge. And how do you know what is correct knowledge? There are different aspects, conditions that have been looked into. One is the subject of pramatra, object of prameya, cognition of pramiti, nature of knowledge or the pramana. In all of this, they say that, the four important pramanas that are required for acquiring correct knowledge are pratyaksha, that is the direct perception, anumana or inference, upamana or analogy, or shabda or the verbal testimony. So even in, most of our aspects, especially when you talk of the sutras, you would kind of, correlate these aspects of the pramanas to the information content that is available in our text. For example, even if I have to talk about the Indian systems of medicine, the oldest text that is available is the Charaka Samhita, and it emphasizes on the use of logic in medicine. And it says that this is as essential as in other subjects. Similarly, when you talk of Sushruta Samhita, he emphasizes the importance of interdisciplinary research. So even in those days, a physician, is not, that is a Vaidya, is not given graduated to be called a Vaidya unless he knows the information related to the plants as well. So he says a physician who has learned just one science cannot be sure of his own science, that is here in this case Ayurveda. And for this reason, the physician has to be versed in many sciences. So this is the kind of, the foundation of our knowledge systems, the Indian knowledge systems, that we talk of rational, we talk of logic, and we talk of also interdisciplinarity amongst different other aspects that are important for transmitting correct knowledge systems over generations. So to kind of emphasize that, how diverse and, the expanse of our knowledge systems, I'll focus on the traditional systems of medicine, because currently the TKDL is focused on our Indian systems of medicine. We cover Ayurveda, Siddha, Unani, and Suvarikpa, and also the yoga practices. And here, as I mentioned, the diversity of our knowledge systems is not just related to an holistic approach, but also in terms of the kind of information content, the languages, and the formats as well. So if anybody is interested, you get our TKDL website and go to the source of information. You will be really surprised to see that we have so many texts that cover these different systems of medicine. So for example, when you talk of Ayurveda, as I mentioned, Charaka Samhita is one of the oldest texts that is available for under the system of medicine, and it covers 120 chapters. And what are the different aspects related to Ayurveda? Of course, it covers three important acharyas, that is Punarvasu, Atreya, Charaka, and Dridvala, who have been associated in putting together the Charaka Samhita. The key principles that is covered in this particular text is diagnosis, etiology, pathology, as well as pathophysiology, and also the treatment modalities. So if you look at the sections again, I personally am very kind of enthralled by the, by the value that each of the texts contain, because I come from the modern science and technology. I'm nowhere, had any kind of education related to any of these traditional systems of medicine, that is Ayurveda, Siddha, Unani, or even Suvarikpa. So if you look at the sections that are covered under the Charak Samhita, it talks about 8 different sections, covering these 120 chapters. The first one is the Sutrasthana, that is the fundamental principles of medicine is taught. The second one is the Nidhanasthana, talking about the diagnostic principles. The Vimanasthana talks about specific medical principles. The Sharirasthana, Indriyasthana talk about the human being and genesis and the sensorial prognosis. Chikitsasthana talks about the therapeutic principles. Kalpasthana about the pharmaceutical preparations, and the Siddhisthana, the therapeutic procedures. So this is to say that, when you talk of any knowledge system, and if in case it has to be something rudimentary without evidences, you would not have this kind of a structure in kind of putting, together the content. I just want to check, somebody has written that, the slides are not moving. Can you see slide number 10 that is on Ayurveda? Can somebody confirm?
Vishwanjani, I can see the slides moving.
Yes, we can see the slides.
Oh. Okay, all right. I think maybe somebody is having a problem. If you have a problem, log off and log in again. Perhaps it would help, please. Yeah, now coming to the next slide, again, in terms of the diversity of information and the expanse of information related to even just Ayurveda, you take up one particular herbal formulation, it's called Triphala, which constitutes 3 fruits, that is Amla, Bibitaki, and Haritaki. Depending on what the carrier of the Triphala is, it is used for a different indication. Say, for example, when I take Triphala with sugar, it is meant for acid peptic disease. When I take Triphala with honey, it is for kapha diseases. When I take Triphala with hot water, it is used as a laxative. When I use it with ghee, it is for pitta diseases. With rock salt, it is for vata diseases. Similarly, if I use it with oil, it is for non-healing ulcers. If I take it with ghee and honey, it is an eyesight promoter. So a single herbal formulation, depending on what a carrier is, has been used for very distinct diseases. Now, if in case, you look at another example of Gudichi, which is a single herb, that is Tinospora cordifolia. Again, depending on what the carrier is, if I take it as a grita, that is with ghee, it is used for vata vikara. If I take it with honey, it is used for kapha vikara. If I take it with sugar, it is for pitta vikara. If I take it with castor oil, that is erinditaila, it is for vata rakta vikaras, diseases. So again, this is to kind of say that, the different Ayurveda formulations, even herbal formulations, just restricting myself only to the therapeutic, aspects of Ayurveda, you can see the expanse as well as the diversity. If I again, go on to look at, just one particular disease, say in this particular case, I have chosen vitiligo, which is a skin disorder, and it leads to a lot of social stigma because there is a loss of melanocytes and patches of white skin is seen. So if I look at the treatment available from within the systems of medicine, you have Ayurveda, which is, covering different herbal formulations, right from Kwath to, other churans and different other formulations. Similarly, in Unani, you have herbal formulations covering different herbs, and in Siddha or homeopathy, or in many of the cases, yoga is also kind of mentioned to be practiced along with the therapeutic formulation. In addition to all of that, you also have local health traditions by the folk healers, which includes red clays found by the riverside, and they mix it with ginger juice. Sometimes powdered radish seeds are used along with vinegar. Sometimes just a mixture of turmeric and mustard oil is used to kind of treat vitiligo. So this is again talking about the expanse and significance of one particular system of medicine. And even personally, I was very surprised to see that, while we have heard about herbs being used, there is a particular section of Ayurveda that is focused on Pushpa Ayurveda. This particular case is, you can find the details in Kalyana Karaka, which is a treatise by Ugraditya Acharya, Jain physician of the 9th century. And he covers too many overlapping windows are causing shade content to be blocked by operating system, it says. I'm not sure what it is.
Now, ma'am, PPT is visible. You can continue.
Okay. Should I go?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the Pushpa Ayurveda is, as I mentioned, focused on, about 18,000 kinds of flowers have been used for providing therapeutic benefits. One is, by just looking at the flowers, that is darshanam, okay. Sparsham is by making the patient wear the particular garment made of the required flowers. Alepana is to kind of make it into a medicated drug by grinding it into a pulp and using it as part of a therapeutic formulation. The other one is the Agrana Vidhanam or Nasya Vidhanam, by either smelling or making nasal drops and using this particular thing. So this is the kind of information content. Again, you have different texts that are focused on it in different languages. And this is only talking about one particular stream within a larger stream of Ayurveda. So this talks about the diversity and as well as the value that each of the information provides to us. Again, continuing with the same thing, when you talk of therapeutic indications and all that, India has always been a beauty conscious nation as it appears from the ancient texts. You had different texts that talks about the different systems of medicine. And here, these are all the texts that cover the cosmetics usage and also the herbal formulations indicated for each of the indications related to cosmetics. And there are 5 chapters that have been mentioned in this one particular book called The Herbal Cosmetics in Ancient India. And it is about facial cosmetics, oral hygiene, depilatories, body cosmetics, and cosmetics for hair as well. So one particular example that I would like to touch upon from the Ashtanga Hridayam is, there have been treatments mentioned for the different for pimples, for hair growth promotion, and as well as early graying of hair. So this is again to say that, when you are talking of texts which are very, very old, even those books contain specific information. It is not general information. It is specific information mentioned for a specific ailment or for a particular application. So this is the kind of information that has been made available by our ancestors through the texts that have been put together. Similarly, even when you talk of cosmetics, perfumery also become very important. If I talk of Varahimira's Brihat Samhita, there are 2 different shlokas that talk about not only creation of one particular perfume, but a huge ocean of perfumes, I would say. And in the shloka 10 talks about, mixing different ingredients, 9 different ingredients, and by permutations and combinations of using different parts of this 9 ingredients, you can arrive at about 3.6 lakh different options of perfumes that one can prepare. Similarly, when I talk of, the other shloka, that is shloka 13 and 14, it talks about 16 different substances. Again, if you stick to the formula that has been mentioned in the text and, mix any 4 of the ingredients that have been mentioned out of the 16 in the specific parts, looking at that particular, the table that has been mentioned, you would be able to arrive at about 1.75 lakh different permutations and combinations of the perfumes. So this is again talking about the diversity of our traditional knowledge. Moving fast, I will not touch much upon the agriculture because Professor Murthy has already covered, but there are again specific texts that are talked about our Indian traditional agricultural practices, right from Krishi Parashara to Kautilya Shastra, Brihat Samhita I had just mentioned, and you also have very specific texts like Vriksha Ayurveda and many others as well. So again, in addition to the traditional texts that talk about the codified practices, you also have, the local practices by the farmers. The Indian Council of Agricultural Research had documented many of these ITKs, that is, they call it as indigenous technical knowledge, and they have covered about 7 different volumes of this TK inventory in agriculture. One particular book is of high relevance because they had taken ICR institutes had taken about 38 different ITKs and validated them. Some of them, 23 of them were cross-sectoral validations, whereas 15 were single sector center experiments that re-emphasize the value of our knowledge systems, including the oral traditional knowledge. If you look at the diversity of the topics, you have, right from rainfall to, water resources to the seasons, the soil types, the laying out of the gardens, planting trees, which one should be planted near the house, the crops and varieties, sowing and farming operations, diseases and treatments, and even the post-harvest storage and preservation and so on and so forth. So that is the vastness of the information that is covered even in our codified text. Moving forward, I would like to give one particular example of Kunapchala, which is known to be the oldest organic fermented liquid manure. Kunapchala finds mention in the Vrikshaya Ved as well as Krishi Parashara. Initially, when you talk of the ancient Kunapchala that has been used by our ancestors, they were all from the farm waste, whatever comes as waste from the farmland or from the farmer's house. So it was made of animal bones, marrow, blood, fish, etc. And also sesame cake, germinated wood bean, rice husk, honey and ghee, and they are all fermented and used as a manure. Not only did it have a fertilizer ability, but it also provided as a pesticide. So in the year 2004 and between 2004 and 2012, the Asian Agri-History Foundation, under the leadership of Professor Vayal Nene, created the herbal Kunamchala because there were a lot of concerns using the animal waste as well. So here, to kind of make up for the loss of certain properties with the herbal Kunamchala, they had added weeds to it, which provided for both fungicidal as well as insecticidal properties. And this particular herbal Kunamchala was widely tested across different farmlands. It included vegetables, fruits, field crops, and so on and so forth. And they found that even today, you have a productivity increase of about 20 to 30% while making the farms, organic. So this is related to natural and organic farming. In today's context, when we look at the vastness of the information, you had different herbal kunabjalas that have been mentioned in our literature, and right from the Kunabjala that uses safari fish to rats to chicken flesh to mix of different animal kinds to also having panchagavya in the Kunabjala. Much of these Kunabjalas have been validated by modern methods, right, from the year 2006 to very recently the review article was mentioned. And in each of these herbal Kunabjalas, the diversity within the Kunabjala is one can appreciate everything related to increase in the productivity of the crops. So this is the value that our ancient systems still kind of provide. Similarly, when you talk of our traditional practices, it also covers information related to germination of seeds, especially seeds which have a very hard perica. So here is a particular example where they had given the germination of tamarind by mixing it with a powder of Triphala. I had earlier mentioned in Ayurveda, Triphala has been used depending on the carrier for a variety of human ailments. Here you see that this particular Triphala has been used in Vrikshaya way to promote seed germination. Similarly, way back in in our ancient times, the grafting process was known. So there is a particular shloka in Varahamira's Brihat Samhita that talks about the grafting and how trees were transported to other countries by grafting and using along with it ghee and apagon, sesame, honey, vidanga, milk, and cow dung. So it also describes specifically what has been used for which purpose and for which plant, and this is the kind of information content that you would be able to find in our ancient text. I did mention, and I keep repeating to say that when we talk of traditional knowledge systems, it's not just limited to what we have in our text, but it is also about the local practices. So here is an example that has been mentioned in the ICAR text, one of the text. It is about the foot and mouth disease that is generally seen in the cattle across different farmlands across the country. And here is a particular example when, two of the things that is that is Terminalia valerica, and this one has been used for Terminalia cebula, harida, and bahada have been used for the foot and mouth disease. And this is a particular practice that has been used by the farmers in the Navapada district of Orissa. So in terms of the validation, this particular effort was taken by the ICAR and the Department of Veterinary Medicine, West Bengal University of Animal and Fisheries undertook the study. And this was also in collaboration with the KVK of Kalahanti, Bhavanipatna, Orissa. So here, if you look at the method of validation, it goes very scientific. There had been 5 different groups. One is, of course, the untreated control group, and the other were all treatment groups. One is the ITK method of Harida and Baheda. The second one was with a paste of fruit barks of Kerala tree. The third one was neem oil applied twice daily. And the fifth one was the conventional treatment of Paxivir. And after doing the entire experiment, the investigators found that the use of Harida and Baheda was found to be as effective as the conventional therapy, whereas, while the animals took 5 to 6 days to recover using the ITK method, it took about 4 to 5 days using the veterinary medicine. So this is the kind of information that we have even from the local practices. Similarly, when you talk about fisheries, again, local practices become important. Here is a particular case where they had used the banana stem, pseudostems, to kind of increase the oxygenation of the water bodies so as to enhance the fisheries cultivation. So again, this has been validated and found to be a low-cost solution with locally available resources. So everything that had been mentioned even in our ancient text, one would appreciate that if you go into the details of it, they have been largely, kind of dependent on the local resources that were available during that particular period of time. When we talk of agriculture, water again becomes very, very important. And across the country, you have different water conservation methods that relate to climate, that relate to the rainfall, that relate to the geographical region, and as well as the local materials. So here, this particular slide, I have just given you a few examples from the Trans-Himalayan region to the Brahmaputra Valley to the island regions. Every part of our country had specific structures, frameworks to conserve water, which was otherwise naturally available. So this again is, be it the Mohenjo-daro period or even the current period, you still see many stepwells. And of course, some of the stepwells are going through a revival right now, considering the water shortage that we have. We talked about medicine, we talked about agriculture, we talked about water. Food and nutrition then becomes very important. Again, like how I had spoken about the Indian systems of medicine, I had spoken about agriculture. You have focused books that talk about traditional food and nutrition. Again, this is not some random book that covers different commentaries by different acharyas, but you look at one particular book, Kshema Kutuhala. It talks about different aspects, and there are the 12 chapters are covered. It is called the Utsavas in this particular book. It talks about the dietetics and the culinary art, that is the Paka Shastra or Paka Kala, and right from the different types of the Dravya Pakas to utensils being cooked, what are the qualities of the physician and cook, because the physician was important because much of this food was also meant for the royal families, the seasons and the routines to follow, the daily routine, Ritucharya, Dinacharya, everything is mentioned. The meat food, cooking with fish, different vegetables, preparations from flowers, and appetizers, and so on and so forth are all covered in detail in these texts as well. So again, to kind of give you an example, if you talk about the Paka Darpanam, there is one particular, example that I have picked about the, making of the dal. So not only the ingredients are mentioned, but it also talks about, how can you enrich the quality of the food, and in this particular particular case, if there are any health benefits, it is mentioned. And they say that by preparing by this method, this particular food is, good enough even for the royal family, that is the king of that particular nation. Again, when you talk of food, utensils and eating formats also become important. As much as our country is diverse across regions, even localities, the patterns are also different, right from cooking utensils to the eating format. I've just picked up two examples. Plantain leaf is widely used across South India. It not only caters to cordiality, but also in terms of other benefits like stimulating the digestive fire, making the person who's eating out of a plantain leaf feel less tired, and it also helps in gout. Similarly, if you talk of madar leaf, that is Calotropis gigantea, it is useful for treating abdominal tumor, pain, poisoning, dyspnea, anemia, and skin diseases also. And they also mention that it aggravates pitta. So people with a pitta prakriti should be careful about eating on a madar leaf. Talking about, utensils and all that, we come to the domain of metallurgy, and I'm sure many of you know that we have metallurgical marvels in the country, be it the Delhi Qutub Minar, the pillar in the iron pillar at the Qutub Minar, or even at the Dhar in Madhya Pradesh. These are all our metallurgical marvels that talk about a unique way that metallurgy was being practiced in the country. Unlike the systems of medicine or agriculture or even food that I talked about, you do not have any focus books on metallurgy. There is mention of, metals, alloys, and different other items being used in India by many of our acharyas. Even in Rig Veda, there is mention. Of course, in terms of Rasayana, you have Rasaratna Samuchaya and many other Rasarnava. Even Charak Samhita, Shishrak Samhita, they all include Rasayanas. But when you talk about specifically metallurgy in the context of alloys and preparation and commercial scales and all that, it is largely the artisans who had been practicing such metallurgical procedures, and that is not so very well documented compared to the other subject areas. Yet again, I just give you one particular example of wood steel, which is also called the Ukku steel. And this is in today's terminology, it is a high grade, ultra high carbon steel, and it is made by the the crucible processes across South India, part of Tamil Nadu, Andhra, and as well as Karnataka. And this is first you prepare porous iron, then you hammer it to release the slag. After breaking it up, you add wood chips to provide the carbon that is required. And once these pieces are absorbed, you get the uniform composition of 1 to 1.6 carbon, and this is the wood steel. And this particular wood steel was, very famous because they, contributed to making of the very famous Damascus swords, which are even patented. We had recently done an analysis, and many of the Damascus swords are patented by other countries. And this particular Damascus sword is known for its agility to cut a silk scarf equally with that of any wood or even a human head. And that is the marvels of metallurgy that had come from our country. Similarly, when you talk of alloys, I give you one particular example of the bronzes of Kerala, because our Indian knowledge systems is so vast and diverse, it is going to be a little difficult for me to cover every aspect of metallurgy or any other subject area. When you talk of iron metal mirror, it is a non-glass. It is a metal mirror that has been used since many thousands of years ago. And if you look at the composition, it is very specific. It is a bronze material made out of casting root. Similarly, is the Kadavallur eating bowl, of the Swami Malay and Mannar icons, which relate to vessels and bells. And this is made by the lost wax process. It is the oldest metal shaping technique from India. And all of this, if you look at it, the content of the alloys, copper is used, brass is used, and lead is used. And when you look at the earliest evidence of brass, typically brass has 64% copper and 36% zinc. But when you talk of the brass from India, it contains about 71% of copper, 6% of zinc, and just about 1% of iron in it. So this is the kind of differences in the way the metallurgical processes have happened, and my discussions would be incomplete if I do not talk of the temple architectures. I've just given you one example of the Brihadishwara temple from Tanjavur. IGNC has done a lot of work related to this Brihadishwara temple. You can go visit their website. They also have a multimedia DVD on this. It not only talks about the marvel, the huge linga that is there based on a single rock, but it also talks about the sculptures and also the architectural marvel of the temple itself, including the vimanas. And inside of the temple, it covers, the different aspects of the temple, including the dance karanas of the Bharata's Natya Shastra. So this is how every temple has mentioned, along with the information related to maybe the particular kingdom, the kings, or the most important aspects that govern administration and governance of that particular kingdom. It's not just such, huge architectural marvels cover what is India's architecture, but also as simple as a mud monastery that is available in the Spiti Valley of Himachal Pradesh. This is called the Ajanta of the Himalayas. It is one of the oldest monasteries that is operating in this particular region. It is made of mud along with raw earth, water, and fibrous materials like straw. It is still living today. It's a living tradition, and the frescoes and tankas are there, perhaps a little faded, but the structure still has stood the weathering of time and the different the ecological imbalances that have ravaged the particular area over time as well. Similarly, we had also talked about the traditional bungas in a similar activity of the CSIR called the swastik, where we are communicating traditional, scientifically validated traditional knowledge to the communities. So here the bungas are, again made up of mud bricks and tree branches. Where required, sometimes they do use metal beams for, creating the post. And these bungas came very handy when, especially after the Bhuj tragedy, the earthquake that happened in 2001. About 1,400 houses were built quickly so as to kind of help in rejuvenation of the area soon after the earthquake. Similarly, even in when the Kosi floods ravaged Bihar in 2008, about 15,000 houses were built immediately as a model village, and later on about 1 lakh bungas were built to accommodate the local population. So such traditional structures are still relevant today. Art and culture, when you talk of, I've covered so far only the science and technology part of many aspects related to our knowledge systems, but, India is rich also in terms of our cultural expressions. Our art and culture are important. Many of these are, kind of, we are losing out on many of these cultural expressions. And I think especially through this one district, one product and the geographical indications, there seems to be some efforts towards rejuvenating and bringing back these living traditions. When we talk of the performing arts, again, these are cultural expressions. They are not just meant for entertainment purpose. They also convey societal importance in terms of aspects related to health, environment, literacy, family planning, empowerment, harmony, social harmony, agriculture, so on and so forth. Some of the examples that I given on this slide is the Yakshagana from Karnataka, Bharatanatyam from Tamil Nadu, music that, it could be Carnatic music, it could be Hindustani music, or even folk music. Everything, even music is used as a therapy today to provide, mental illnesses. Languages and all of this, whatever we cover, we have talked about codified knowledge, we have talked about manuscripts, we also talked about oral traditional knowledge. Language becomes very important. In many of our Indian languages, there is no script. It just happens to be a dialect that is being spoken. So we are on the verge of losing many, many old languages. So the government of India under the Ministry of Tribal Affairs is doing plenty in terms of identifying and enlisting these endangered languages. And in certain of the languages, they have identified about the primers that need to be looked into and taken care of. So this is how things have been progressing in the country. I'm sure that there are people who are not related to only science and technology who have joined us today. Even in terms of governance and management, especially the management and political strategies that have been used. Arthashastra has been used as a guide, okay, the Bible, I would say. It enumerates, this particular book enumerates the importance of maintaining the right balance between welfare of people and augmenting the resources of the state. And you have books that are available. This particular thing is from Shamastri of 1919, and thereafter multiple editions of these books have been brought out, not just for the Indian community, but many foreign interested parties as well. The Arthashastra, again, if you look at it, it's a very well-structured book. It is known as the book for art and science of governance, diplomacy, and war. And if you look at it, there are about 15 chapters covering different aspects of this one, governance, diplomacy, and war. And in all of this, what is of a greater relevance to the discussion that we have we are having today is about the 4 sciences that has been emphasized in this particular book. It is about Anvishaki, that is metaphysics or logical philosophy, that is a science of inquiry that is very important. The triple Vedas, that is Trayi, Varti, agriculture, cattle breeding and trade, and Dhandaniti, that is the science of government. Okay, in all of this, Anvishaki happens to be the most beneficial, keeps the mind firm, bestows excellence of foresight, speech of action. And this is the light to all kinds of knowledge. Similarly, when you talk of the Nyaya Sutras, the Nyaya Shastra, it is about the science of reasoning. As I had mentioned, much of our knowledge systems have been based on sound logic, sound reasoning, and also it is covered by the different pramanas that I had mentioned in this particular Nyaya Sutras. They are talking about 16 different categories, that is valid knowledge, pramana, objects of the knowledge, prameya, doubt, samshaya, purpose, prayojana, example, drishtanta, conclusion, siddhanta, and so on and so forth. So it is to say that, when we talk of our knowledge systems, it all depends on what you read, what you understand, and what you gain from them. Much of our texts, do cover very definitive principles and specific information. It is up to us to actually take it forward. And how do we take it forward? We have enabling policies from the Government of India, the National Education Policy of 2020, and as well as the National IPR Policy of 2016, where traditional knowledge happens to be a very important aspect of these 2 policy documents. Similarly, you'll get to hear more about the traditional knowledge digital library in the days to come. We are looking currently at the Indian systems of medicine. We have started with agriculture and metallurgy, but we are looking at a larger scope for the TKDL in the times to come. And all of you would be very interested in the Indian knowledge systems because of the UGC as well as the ACTE, who have ensured that the IKS is part of your curriculums, of course, the college and as well as the school. And especially in the context of IKS, it is a mandatory course to take. And the IKS Knowledge Systems Division, our partner in this particular workshop, have been offering various opportunities, be it internships or research or even the centers of excellence. I'm sure you would be able to reach out to the relevant authorities to ensure that we all protect, preserve, and promote our traditional knowledge systems for the global welfare. Thank you. Thank you so much for your patient listening.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Pranam, for your informative session. Please give me a few 5 to 10 minutes to complete the assessment first. Then we can start. So,
Sure.
everyone is waiting. Please give us. So we have shared assessment link in the chat box and in the Google Drive also. Please take 10 minutes and complete your assessment. Then we'll come back to our next session, question and answer session. So we have also uploaded the assessment link in the Google Drive. Please complete your assessment. We have another 5 minutes. So it's very short assessment. There are only 5 MCQs. Please, some of you already have submitted. Please complete as soon as possible. 2 minutes left. Please submit your assessment. You have only 2 minutes. Time up. Okay, time up. So we can go to the next session. Pranam madam. So we can take some questions. It's already 5:15. We can take some questions. So we request all
Yes.
of you, please, you can type your questions so we can solve some questions. And you can also, you can raise your digital hand. We can unmute.
I think there was one question that talked about, doing research in different languages. Okay. I'm sure you can do that because language is also one up, stream of education in the country. So if in case you would want to do research, they can choose whichever language and then do research in that particular language. Is there any specific book related to IPR? IPR in terms of, you do have books that relate to IPR, the general categories and all that. Yes. I think, Anil, you'll be covering that in your presentation tomorrow, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so I'll do it. Somebody
How to
wants to
work
work on Indian psychology in IKS. So maybe Anuradha, I see she is here. Would you want to answer that?
Latest we have figured out 16 areas within IKS. So in that there is a particular domain, Indian psychology. You can look into that part, and if you go to our guidelines, there is a detailed description of each and every domain of IKS. There is also included language vibhaga, bag vibhaga. So you can explore the description. There are more, I think, 5 to 6 pages description of each and every discipline. you can go through our website.
I think
And
Piyush, there's one other question related to setting up of the IKS cell in the universities, and what is it these cells are expected to do, or how can IKS division help them in that particular cell?
yes, time to time we are uh, giving opportunity to establish IKS center in different institutions. In that particular time, you have to apply, and through the review process, we are giving grant. So it's just done. Next time it will come. I think after 5 months it will come again. Please follow our website.
Yeah, Piyush, cells that are already there, like many of the colleges and universities have already set up the IKS cells. So how can the IKS division help them?
Mm, for outreach activities, you can collaborate with IKS. So you can send your proposal with schedule and speakers list. So IKS division review committee will review that proposal, and there is any opportunity they will give grant and permission to use our logo. That's the two aspects to collaborate.
So somebody, I think Anupama Verma has asked, can you suggest any repository where the original books and manuscripts are available for download free of cost? In terms of original books, there are many books. If you do search the internet, you'll find particularly the archive.org and as well as the Rare Books Society of India. Even the IGNCA do have provided several books that are free of cost. I think the IIT Kharagpur has also provided a lot of books free of cost. It may or may not relate to the Indian knowledge systems, but they have a huge repository of books that have been made available. With regards to manuscripts are generally out of private collections. The National Mission for Manuscripts, that is the NMM under the Ministry of Culture, they have digitized. IGNCA has digitized many manuscripts, but if you get the permission of the original, the catalog has been made available on the website. If you need any specific manuscript, then you'll have to seek the permission of the owner, even that is mentioned. And then you go back to the IGNCA with the approval of the owner. You have to pay some minimal cost, then you will get the manuscript. What is the method of inquiry and research in philosophical texts like Samkhya and Yoga for practical applications? Anuradha, would you like to respond here?
Arya is busy in
It
office.
appears, yeah.
Yes.
So maybe we'll address this tomorrow. That's not a problem.
Yes. So it's 5:20, ma'am.
Yeah.
So we
Is there
can.
any course in mathematics in IKS? Yes, that is what has been mentioned. You please look at, I urge all of you to please look up the IKS division website, okay, because you will get to know what are the activities of the IKS division, what is the material made available on their website, both for learning as well as information. And some of it, as Professor Murthy already mentioned, you can use it to frame your own syllabus and curriculum. So this is going to be of use to everybody.
Yes, regarding IK spreading on of all students, there is a opportunity called IKS internship program. So through that initiative, any student can collaborate with IKS project. So this is for IK all students only. So any PI, any faculty can make a team out of their existing students, and they can apply for IKS in institutional internship. So this is announcement is launched today. So it will open for 30 days. Please apply. as a faculty for IKS internship program. So, ma'am, with
We
your
can start.
request, you can
Yes,
stop
please.
Shanti Mantra.
Yes, please.
ॐ सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः
So see you